Hello everyone. I think slowly let's get started. We are about 6 or 7 minutes too late. We will do our best to cover this delay. Welcome everyone. This is a session on researcher mental health and well-being. I hope you are at the right session. There are many smiling faces, so I'm quite sure this is where you fit in perfectly. My name is Gabor Kismihok. I'm a PI. I'm leading a research lab at TIB on learning and skill analytics, but I'm also chairing a cost action which is called Researcher Mental Health. And most of the discussions, what we're going to have today, will be about this cost action and associated projects. A little bit about the topic, what we are going to discuss these days. I guess it's not very surprising. Many people come this anecdotal experience that something is wrong with our research environment. People are coming to work with a mood which is, let's put it this way, suboptimal. People underperform. People do not cheer up. The everyday life becomes oftentimes quite bitter. And already research shows that around 42% of people working in academic environments can be diagnosed. Is it possible to be diagnosed with some sort of disorder? And this is a very sad story. That means basically 1 out of 3 people may have a problem. And what kind of problems are these? About 1.5 years ago, I conducted a workshop with Hungarian PhD students, and I put here some quotes, and I will read these quotes, and I think they are showing the situation quite well. So the first one: I feel guilty and anxious all the time because I feel like I'm not doing my work well enough. I constantly feel guilty when I'm not only doing research. I feel that after the PhD, I will have almost no knowledge of anything that is useful on the job market. Even my extended family or close circle of friends fail to recognize the value of research work. I think this is a really sad one. My working hours are not flexible. In the evening, I put the children to bed, then I have time for my intellectual tasks. But either I fall asleep or I can manage them, but then after 2-3 hours of sleep, the clock is already ringing because at 8 a.m. I have to be ready in my work uniform at the institute. It's very soul-crushing. As a woman, I never feel ready to have children because of the constant inflow of new tasks, projects, and responsibilities. I'm getting older and afraid of running out of time. Super frustration. There is no differentiation on the basis of results performance, which is not a motivating environment. The best colleagues and role models leave the field and are often not replaced by the outstanding ones. So I think these quotations show more or less what kind of research environment we are facing these days in general. And we believe that this problem is systemic. And oftentimes the awareness, both on personal, institutional and national level, are still missing. Even though there is a lot of work is being done in this area, still we need to act. And we have to act now as soon as possible to change this status quo. We are voluntary organizations. MCAA is a voluntary organization, so it's not surprising that the first thought what we have is, let's do some bottom-up movement, let's do some grassroots initiatives and change this status quo. And this is how REMO, the Researcher Mental Health Observatory, was born. I'm looking at Brian, who was there when we started this. It was back in 2018. It was after ESOF, the European Open Science Forum. And we were sitting in a bar, 5 of us. And we started thinking, after a researcher mental health workshop, which was completely overcrowded, we expected like 30 people showing up, but the room was totally full. People were super interested. They all wanted to tell their stories. And we thought, okay, let's do something. We need to do something about it. And in that bar, 5 of us decided, okay, let's write a proposal for a cost action. A cost action is a networking a program which is financed by states of the European Union, and it gives, for the successful candidates, funding, an annual funding to organize knowledge transfer activities. So we submitted this proposal. In the first year it failed, but in the second year it went through. And so we could start our network. We were around 10 people. And right now, the network is constantly growing. Right now, we have more than 40 countries. I think 250 is already around 300. There are people coming in every single day to this network because they want to do something about the situation. So this network is now representing quite a lot of organizations. It was born in MCAA. It was a truly MCAA-driven action. But now Eurodoc joined, national PhD organizations, early career researcher organizations joined these initiatives. And yeah, we are gaining momentum. We don't have a lot of time to discuss in details what the action has been achieved in the past 2 years. We are about half-time of our lifetime. We have 2 more years to go. But in case you want to have a good summary about how we think, how we feel about the situation, and what do we want to do, then please check the manifesto, what we published last year. And it's being translated in a number of national languages. So it's not only available in English, but it's available in, I think, more than 10 languages. So now you can ask, what can you do? What can we do? And actually, this session is exactly about this. We want to showcase, we have 5 lightning talks soon. We want to showcase that how you can utilize this network, how you can utilize all the activism, what is available in this network, and start making change, start implementing meaningful ideas, getting funding for those ideas, and simply delivering on them. So we have 5 lightning talks now. 4 presenters are here in the room. 1 will be online. So it's Mathias, Stéphanie, Stefan Moll will be online, Mayya and Christian. They will present 5 ideas, 5 activities of REMO, what we are doing. So with any further ado, I would like to hand over to Mathias, and please, if you can say a few words about Oscar and the Oscar pilot. There you go.
Thanks a lot, Gabor, for the introduction. And indeed, when we see the image in the very beginning, it gives a dark feeling. But as Gabor mentioned, we're here to show the different components in which we can focus to change this. First of all, there's the Oscar project. When we think about mental health and well-being, one of the important components to focus on is training. Perhaps also a quick introduction on where I'm coming from. I come from Belgium, Université Libre de Bruxelles, ULB, where I'm responsible for the training and career development of our researchers. When we think about training in an ideal way, training opportunities should be accessible to all researchers. Training should ideally also be personalized, and training should involve a focus on mental health and career development. So how can we achieve this? Well, our approach here is AI-based learning recommendations and online mentoring. This is exactly what the Oscar project is about. It's an Erasmus Plus project. It stands for online open learning recommendations and mentoring towards sustainable researcher careers. It has 3 central pillars. First of all, there's a development of an online AI-driven framework and platform that allows users to receive learning recommendations. So you need to see this as a platform that allows researchers to develop their skills, both very specific and transferable skills, in a very individual way. And the platform also takes into account the specific learning context of each individual learner. The second and the third one, I'll take them together, because it's developing a mentoring program for, on the one hand, mental health, and on the other hand, career development. If you think about mental health, we talk about the psychological support that is needed to understand and mitigate also the impact of the stressful aspects of the academic working environment. When you think about career development, we want to support and facilitate reflections about the skills and expertise that people need either in their current professional activity or in the various career paths that lay ahead of them. The project is nearing its end at the moment, so this is an ideal opportunity for you to test also the tools that we have been developing. This brings me to the Oscar Pilot Days that will take place the 16th of March and the 12th of April. It is an ideal opportunity to test, first of all, the AI-based learning application that was developed, the eDoer platform, and second of all, to test the mentoring on mental health or career development. The requirements are easily met by you. You need to be an active researcher. You can be both a junior or senior researcher profile, and ideally you're based in Europe. To register yourself, you can quickly scan the QR code. Already register yourself to participate. We would love to have your feedback. I'll just give you a brief moment to scan this. And I can already tell you that the eDoer platform exists both in the form of a website, which you can access through your PC, and an application that is under development. The beta version is already ready to be tested and used. So once you have scanned this QR code, it's time for the next one, and that leads you to the eDoer platform. Here, when you use this code, you will see the journey on mental health and the specific courses that we offer inside. And I'm looking forward to answer our questions later on in the discussion.
Thank you very much. Now the floor goes to Stéphanie. There you go.
Hello, everybody. So I'm Stéphanie Gauttier. I'm an assistant professor, information systems, nothing to do with mental health at first sight. I'm also a research team leader, which means I actually have to take care of the mental health of my team. And I'm also the vice chair of REMO that Gabor and Mathias have been mentioning. The reason why I came, let's say, into that field is actually quite personal in the first place. Unfortunately, during the first, let's say, part of my Marie Curie experience, I noticed some things that I felt were kind of wrong in some of the labs that I visited. And I felt like something had to change, even though I didn't know what in the first place, which had motivated me at some point to try to set up a mentoring program with Dara, who is here in the assembly for MCAA. But then we had this big problem of, we were able to help maybe 20 people over a year, but 20 people is not enough compared to the number of people, amongst us who suffer, let's say, from suboptimal conditions in the research labs where they were. But we didn't have the time, the energy, the resources to basically scale it up. But with REMO, we figured out another way maybe of doing things. So what I'm going to present to you is what we call an ambassador program. And it's basically, instead of being one or two people trying to, spend their energy in trying to change things, it's about helping people who want to actually advocate and do some change to be able to do so. And this is what we've been doing already last year. We've been training over 50 people, so something like 25 people face-to-face, but also people online, in order to become mental health ambassadors. To do that, we've developed a training program that is aimed not only at early career researchers, but in general aimed at researchers. They can be senior people, practitioners, people who actually are involved into mental health and psychology or therapy, and also the administrative staff of universities or research managers. What is important for us is to actually include absolutely everyone, because everybody has something that they can bring to the discussion, and everybody has access to different levels, let's say, of stakeholders. While it is important that we as individuals try to understand, what is right, what is wrong, what can we do, how can we help, how can we create maybe some form of peer-to-peer support system. It is also important that we recognize that we need people also who have access to institutions. In that sense, people from doctoral schools, a little bit more established professors can also participate in the discussion. And of course, the administrative staff is also here to give some support, and they want to be included into those conversations because they want to see that what they do has meaning. And in a way, nothing has more meaning than, seeing somebody being happy on the job versus, somebody who wants to quit your institution. So in the training program, we're trying to merge a little bit those different layers. We dedicate one day mostly to the individual and understanding mental health. We dedicate another day in trying to understand how mental health can be addressed in doctoral schools. We also try to understand what could be the different messages and narratives that we could give about mental health. And finally, we try to understand what does it mean to work with policymakers at different levels, and we try to understand a little bit better who could be our stakeholders so that we know who to talk to and how to achieve change. This is part, obviously, of personal development, so it's something that you can do for your own training. It's also something that is important to us as a project because based on that training, we hope that our ambassadors feel a little bit more empowered in trying to do the policy briefs and national overviews that you may hear about in a little while. And some of them are here today. I mean, there's been Anna, there's Mayya. So lots of people who actually are coming back to our communities to try to also give back what they've received, and I thank them for this. Ultimately, we want people to have action plans. So again, this is a lot about doing. It's a lot about understanding what is the priority and what we should do. And so we hope to be able to continue with that in the future. To do that, we're going to have a second edition of the Ambassador School. It's going to be in May in Paris. You can scan the QR code if you want to fill in the form to actually join. And the way this works, in a very few words, is that we have people who can come on site, and for that we give grants. And we thank Brian for managing, the grant money for this. And if you can't come, or if, we don't have enough grants for everybody, we can also let you actually participate online. So we hope that, you figure something out in there. So please, if you want to register, do that. The program is not totally out yet, but we'll also update you as soon as this is available. Thank you for your attention, and I hope that we motivate you to do some change.
And now over to our online presenter, Stefan Moll. Stefan, can you see us, hear us? There you are.
I see you and hear you. I hope you can hear me as well.
I do hear you.
Fantastic. It's amazing that technology works. First off, I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you today. Some personal circumstances emerged this week that led me to need to cancel my attendance of the conference. But I'm happy to be here virtually nonetheless. To talk to you a little bit about an initiative that we've undertaken as part of the Research on Mental Health Observatory project. As the name says, we're about observing mental health, and part of this mission then is to collect data and evidence as to what are the antecedents of mental health and mental ill health within institutions across Europe. And so early on in the REMO project, we initiated thinking about running basically a European-wide survey on mental health that I'd like to tell you a little bit about today. So let me see if my slides will work with me. Yeah. So about a year ago, I think we had the first meeting of the REMO survey. SIG stands for Special Interest Group. Back in January 2022, we set ourselves a mission of implementing the largest ever benchmark on mental health in European academia, and that we would do so by February 1st, 2023. Well, we've sort of been passed by time, but we decided then to give ourselves a little bit more time to prepare this survey, because it's turned out to be quite an ambitious project. So why did we set ourselves this mission? well, there's some prolific professors in this field, Arnold Bakker and Demruti, who've claimed that about 70% of the causes of burnout are attributable to the organization. And that actually implies kind of a research challenge in the sense that it's difficult to establish how that which organizations do actually impact individual level mental health. So we came up with this mission of basically, first off, looking at the state of researcher mental health across institutions and countries. So this kind of the bronze scenario, if you will. The silver scenario that we set for ourselves is that we would try to investigate what institutions across Europe or across the Cost Action member countries, I should say, are doing there when it comes to supporting the mental health of their incumbents. And finally, our goal, if you will, is to ascertain how that which institutions are doing is related to individual level mental health. And that's challenging from a research perspective because it requires that we establish how variance in policies and in procedures that are in place in institutions across institutions actually relates to the individual health of people residing within those institutions. And so we've constrained the goals to the first 3 points on these slides then, but efforts are already underway to submit Horizon 2020 proposals and other proposals to tease out causal effects. So essentially the current endeavor is about establishing relationships between organizational level policies and individual level mental health. And then in future research, we are aiming to actually run quasi-experimental designs and process approaches to actually establish the effect that targeted interventions may have in improving mental health. So in this study, we are leveraging a multi-level design. Initially, we thought that we would collect data at the individual level, the group level, the leader level, the organizational level, and the overarching country level, if you will. That turned out to be a little bit too ambitious. So oftentimes in setting up these types of projects, one has to make concessions to that which is desirable. So we've realized or come to realize that it may be too difficult to actually collect data about individual supervisors, for instance, within institutions and the employees that they supervise. So currently the setup is such that we will focus on the country, university, and individual level, and we will try to see whether country differences and university differences actually relate to individual level mental health. So there, where it comes to country level differences, you can perhaps think of investment into academia. You can think of all sorts of national level, perhaps even cultural variables that might be related to how people are doing. And at the institutional level, one can think of HR policies, the support that institutions provide there where it comes to mental health, and perhaps also that which they are not getting right in terms of offering security, job security, and things of that nature, and how that relates to mental health. So where do we currently stand in this project? It's been an amazing journey so far. So to give you an idea, when we started the project a year ago, Jana Lasser and I co-chair this project together with Jana. We thought we would send out kind of a vacancy announcement to enlist the help of individuals within the Remo Cost Action. And we asked people to commit 8 hours of their time a month for the next year to supporting us in this project. And when we sent out this vacancy, we thought we would get a response of maybe 4 or 5 people. And we were blown away when actually 60 people came on board and wanted to work with us into making this survey a reality. So it's been a lot of project management. There's basically in a project of this scale, everything explodes. So we have to deal with authorship issues. So people wanting to co-author on the various manuscripts that we are envisaging, but also issues related to managing the privacy. Mental health data are amongst the most sensitive data that one can collect. So we're having to deal with issues associated with the GDPR and so forth, and also translating the survey into different languages. But we've come a long way. So we're currently in the process of refining the survey. We're having people from different institutional and national contexts examine the survey to see whether it's relevant to their specific locale. The steps to take are to pre-register the survey and our hypotheses, to translate the survey into, I think currently we envisage about 5 languages, and then finally to disseminate the survey. And that there will be a lot of effort required into achieving this, because we're aiming to collect data from tens of thousands of individual researchers across the 40 countries that are currently part of the REMO cost action. So in all this, we are counting on the MCAA community. I didn't prepare a nice QR slide like the other speakers so far, but if you want to join this effort, it's an open project, so anybody can be part of it. We have a lot of work, particularly there when it comes to dissemination, translation activities, survey testing, and so forth. So if you're motivated, if you want to get involved, please send me an email at surveys@mariecuriealumni.eu. I just so happen to, perhaps not completely coincidentally, also be the chair of the MCAA survey work group. So at some point in the near future, we'll be disseminating the survey through that work group as well to the MCAA community. But if you want to get involved in other activities to support us in making this success, please do get in touch. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stefan. And now over to Mayya.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay. My name is Mayya. I have a decade of experience in research in neuroscience in different countries, and I left academia and now I am an independent consultant and a resident fellow in open life science, and I'm also doing master related to community work and psychology. And I got drawn to this REMO project through MCAA a little more than 1 year ago. And I'm going to tell you about this project we are running on developing with the community the policy briefs on mental health of researchers. When Gabor was presenting quotes, I saw in the audience a lot of nodding, and it feels like everyone could relate to mental health issues, and the narratives around mental health are usually very problem saturated. And traditionally, well-being was kind of cared by other disciplines, by pastors, by philosophers, writers, and it's amazing to see how science actually improved our understanding in what constitutes mental health being and what are the factors related to how we are handling with it. I'm using this image to demonstrate you 2 things: that we are all experiencing the same, and that problem is a problem, that the problem is not in the individual, but in the context, in the situation that we are facing. So this project is within Working Group 1 in REMO, that is chaired by Janet Metcalfe, Vitae in UK. And the purpose is to address systemic level of the problem. When Remo started conversations around mental health in this international audience, it was looking as like trying to build up a puzzle of many, many pieces. And how do you build puzzles? You start from the borders or from the recognizable structures. So what we realized that is we need to have, in order to do some actions within our countries or within our communities, is to have some kind of documents in which we will gather the overview of the situation in the country. And last year, when Stephanie presented you the Remo Ambassador School, that was obvious that Remo ambassadors would need such a document to be well prepared for the conversations and show the data, show the links to the reports that already are there. And there is a lot of information around, just it's not in one place. So what we aim to gather is living documents that will be available for everyone interested, that will have a comprehensive overview of mental health and related factors for each country. But the aim is not only to create a document that other people can cite or can be deliverable, but to bring people together, to bring associations in countries together with researchers and policymakers. But also Remo is about capacity building. Therefore, we really would like to have early career researchers that maybe do not feel they have enough training to do that, but what we will be doing, we'll be learning while we do that from more expert people. Therefore, this project is running like a bit since last year, on and off, and we kind of, upon consultations, created a draft template of what one would need to know. And yeah, the important thing would be like what's actually going on now, what's urgent in the country. Is mental health a big topic? And after pandemics, most probably the answer will be yes, it is. What's the evidence for mental health in researchers? Are there surveys? Are there any kind of anecdotal evidences, including Twitter analysis and so on and so forth? What are the relevant stakeholders for that country? What is the structure of mental health support? And what is the level of stigma in that country? And also, of course, we would like to have links to legislations, policies related to researchers, because situations so heterogeneous between countries, even how the researcher career looks like is sometimes really difficult to compare. And this is work in progress. I'm showing you that it's been really a collective work by core members, by Remo Management Committee members, and I really like to highlight the work of ambassadors that Stéphanie was presenting, because they really took the lead to facilitate work in their countries on gathering the team, finding information. And as this map shows, there is already some draft for Finland. It's not yet available, but if you would like to take a look at this, I have it printed here, and soon we will organize probably an event about it. And last but not least, I would like to give back you the call. As this project started MCAA, and the topic today is challenges in science diplomacy and sustainable development. And there is just so much expertise in MCAA around science diplomacy and policy. And I cannot think of a better audience to talk to in order to invite you to collaborate, to contribute to this project because of its widespread distribution and all the activities that are held within chapters or working groups. So please feel free to have a chat afterwards, and to join the Remo Cost Action. For this, you just need to go to the website and follow the links. Thank you.
Thanks, Mayya. And last but not least, Christiane. There you go.
We start at the end. That's a kind of a nice picture for us, but I will go back. So we are talking a lot about mental health. We are talking about mental health today. And actually that's good news, because in a way, talking about it, having a voice and being able to phrase what is up, this is the beginning of everything. The second stage is usually that we go ahead and we figure out how are we affected and how can we do something, how can we change. And the third step, and this is what you already heard, is systemic change. So learning about how we changed ourselves and understood our surrounding can help to make systemic change. My name is Christian Weber. I'm an AI researcher, and I'm currently the substitute chair of the Medical Computer Science research group at the University of Siegen. And I'm here today to talk as the lead of the EduVerse project, which is a project which is closed, and that is fortunate because I can share lessons learned with you. So the EduVerse project is at the intersection between individual change and systemic change. And it works in the intersection because it gives you an understanding how to act with your surrounding. And we have this idea that we can support that with talking to each other, but also by providing training. And the initial idea which we always had, and let's say the shared pain and shared humanity, especially in the MCAA, is we all try to acquire a PhD. And the PhD is usually, it's a transition, it's a space of pain, but it's also a space of movement, self-realization, and becoming anew. And this is positive, fundamentally. And what makes it interesting is it's a kind of a function, to talk about it in a mathematical way. So there are many, many factors which make you up as a person and make you up as a researcher and your research, and they're all somehow pushing at you. They're all weights in the function of success for a PhD, but they are also weights in the function of your personality. They make you unique. So in a way, mental health and talking about mental health is always a unique discussion, and it's about the individual. And we said that the unifying part of it at the end of the day is that it's a journey of maturity to get your PhD. It's a journey of overcoming hurdles. And when you reflect a bit on it, then you realize, wait, this is my life. This is not only PhD. It could be a postdoc. It will be a future career. It will be going into a PI position. And there will be all the time new hurdles. And at the end of the project, through a lot of interaction with individuals which we could train, we figured out that there is one central aspect which really helps you to take action, and that is agency. And I brought 2 citations for that, which is a bit cherry-picked, which is fortunate, because there's a lot of publications right now which have shared opinions, shared sides on it, and helps us to understand what mental health really means. The first one I like a lot because this is about an intervention. So people during the crisis of COVID had the chance to take part in an intervention, but not all of them did. They figured out that using control groups and having a set of observations, that only the individuals which really have a sense left, you could say, of self-control, they're brave enough to even enter any type of intervention about the mental health. And this is a bit of a crazy idea because it means essentially only if you have that tiny bit of control left, a tiny bit of agency about your own narrative, then you seek for help. And on the other hand, it also here proves, it's the second study, that there are all those factors which are pushing on top of you, and they are modifying your own personal story, but they're also modifying what are the solutions for you to act. And our red thread in this regard is that we wanted to offer you training, to offer the ability to understand yourself and your surrounding well enough to regain those agency. But it's not only about training, it is about bringing up a space that in the time span of a week, you have the ability to not only master a basic, a fundament of understanding where you are, but also having a sufficient amount of tools that through talking with your trainers and your peers, we can actually flip the whole thing and bring you into a position that within the week, you start to strategize, to bring up your own ideas how to change your environment. And this is where you come into the acting. And this is complex. Everyone is individual. We are complex as human beings, and that's a good thing. But it also means we need a number of trainers and partners to turn this into reality. And a few of them are here on the stage. And well, I'm really happy that one of the partners is actually MCAA, because we are a vehicle of understanding of personal researcher stories of mobility, self-discovery, and career future. And with all of those partners, we drafted a one-week program. And this, you know, I'm here to theoretically to advertise you. Let's do Oedover's training program. But please take it as a takeaway how you could build your own training program, how you can facilitate your own training program in your environment to make a change and difference. And the idea which we had, and what actually worked quite well, we had a 5-day summer school, and we started with this narrative of dystopia. So imagine the worst place you could be. And of course, the worst place, you automatically imagine your own situation. So somehow you come up with those horror stories, and while telling those, you figure out, wait, those are very similar stories. So maybe it's a shared story. Maybe what happens is what I shared with other individuals, but you should also figure out that your story is unique. So there are small differences. And with this, with the start of dystopia, we try to move to an utopia, which also doesn't exist, of course, but to a better stage. And we move you by building groups through 3 days of training. One is about open science, taking control about your research workflow, and having all those tools to do great research, but also understand what are the parts of your research and how do they affect you and your surrounding. Then, of course, we go into mental health, self-understanding, and we go into interactive storytelling to take a hold of your personal narrative, to tell it in a compelling way, but also, you know, to tell your story, you have to understand yourself. So it's a bit of a journey of self-discovery, and at the very last day, we say every and each group which we build, please report us, what are your ideas to change? And we support you with that, not only with training, but we offered you a digital space, a digital memory where we fill with you what you saw throughout the days, but you can also report, comment, change, modify, and add your own story. And over the perspective of the whole week, you get a kind of takeaway package for change. Now I have some good news, because you always have to have good news, but it's not the end of things. We had to check, of course, did we do the right thing? We're researchers after all, and it seems like everyone was happy. So the most evil aggregator, the average, whatever that means, out of a scale of 10, is quite high with 9. And what I like the most is we also did another type of question. We asked every participant, please rate, what was the most interesting thing for you? What was the one which helped you the most? And you could see that out of all the interventions which we had, of course, mental health is top. Yes, and science communication, telling about yourself, this is also important. And open science land last, but not least, because I brought you this statement at the very end. Participants phrased that they are aware initially that all of those topics are important, and mental health is most important, but open science was the topic which helped them most to take control of their environment, because it means taking control of the stages of your research, and that in turn makes you able to communicate, and that in turn gives you the chance to take a hold of your mental health. So it seems like combinations of training can really help you to tackle mental health, even though it is not about mental health. It is about you having control about your surrounding. And I will end with another set of good news. We are finished. That means you can take away all the nice reports which we wrote. There are 2 essential parts of it. 3, actually. One is we keep the training sustainable through Xilinx, so you can book it in parts or as a whole. We opened all the training material, which you can get a hold, and we also tell you how to run your sessions. And we create an open training handbook, which you can take away, put at home, go to university and say, could you offer this training, organize it internally, find the trainers, or on your own learn how to put together the strings for your identity of taking care and taking ownership of your own mental health. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for all speakers. We have 10 more minutes for questions, but before we enter that, just for you to make sure, to understand what's happening here, with Remo, we are creating some sort of instrument or infrastructure to discuss issues around mental health, involve people, involve change makers who want to do something in this area. Then based on this community, start developing these projects and get funding for these projects, and then try to apply those projects, try to apply that knowledge, what is shared in this community, on a local level. And with this, we have 10 more minutes. Any questions from the audience? I don't know, can we get a microphone over there?
No, there's a second one for the audience. I saw it earlier. Second microphone.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thanks to the speakers for the presentation and actually for the impact you're trying to make to improve this problem. And I want to ask a question, especially to those of you involved in training, and I want to complement it with a story that happened. The question is, who should we target? Who should we train? Should we train ESRs, like specifically to the Marie Curie projects, researchers, or should we train supervisors? So should it be top-down approach or bottom-up approach? And I tell you the story I saw once. So we were in a meeting, and a supervisor asked the ESRs, how many of you are feeling stressed by the PhD? 12 out of 15, 12 out of 15 raised their hands. 3 people didn't. And what was shocking wasn't that. It was the reaction of the supervisor. It was like, oh, then probably you're not doing enough. It was a joke. It was a joke, but it tells you about the culture. And not blaming, because that's the culture we live in. Like, you have to work hard, we have to gain. If you're not stressed, if you're not working hard in hours, possibly you're not getting the right result. So when I saw the sentence you put at the beginning, I imagined the extreme, like, because they were very impactful. Just imagine someone thinking, oh, maybe I'm not doing enough, maybe I'm, what we saw there, and someone saying to you, oh, but that's how you should feel. That's strong, isn't it? So, based on that, I want to know your reaction. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll go ahead and most probably we'll complete it. That's an excellent question, because it raises one very important point, which is, at the end of the day, it's about safety. And it was also, I mean, you asked who should be trained, and it's already the wrong question, because it comes with that pressure and force, and you also phrased it. Of course, we had the idea, let's train people, let's train PhD students, let's train postdocs. And then we said, but we need also the supervisors, let's get them in. And we were very much motivated, and actually we had some PIs in the sessions at the end, but the magic ingredient was the safe space. So if your supervisor is your collaborator, then it could be a good idea to have him or her in the session with you. But then it should come natural. If you have an issue with the supervisor, then obviously they should not be part of it, because the safe space helps you to open up and get new ideas. And you see, I'm not saying we should train them. No, it's about providing the training as tool or as a space for knowledge, which you can then use to go into the discussion. So it's not really about retraining people. But I agree fundamentally that, for example, supervisors should be trained. And it's quite a scary thing that here it is usually not done. So in Germany, we have no training. but I'm collaborating, for example, with the German-Jordanian University in Jordan, and you would expect that based on cultural impact, maybe it's much more monolithic, but they get training. We don't. So every university is different, and we are all sitting on similar but yet different high halls. And I believe strongly we have to do something about the training, but first of all, we need the safe space and the availability of exchange and knowledge, like EDUA, for example.
Yeah, I think it also depends what you want to train people on. So, you know, I think what Ediverse is doing is really trying to empower people to actually regain control. That's what Christian has been saying. What we're trying to do with the Ambassador School is something totally different. And actually, we didn't have many PhD students. We had like almost, I wouldn't say 0 postdocs, but less than 5 people who actually applied as postdocs. And I know why. It's because, you know, in a way, when you're doing your PhD, when you're trying to find a new contract, you have other things that you burden yourself with that you don't have the energy to go and actually change the system. So we ended up, and I was very surprised because that was like a full week. We ended up with having people who run their labs. We're having people who have had, you know, 10 years of experience as senior professors coming over who actually were willing to change. And I think that they are literally our best ambassadors because they want to and they can set an example. I truly don't believe that you can force supervisors to be trained into something that they don't want to do. But if they see someone in their lab or in the next lab actually, you know, starting to perform better, to retain people and so on, it can change. And I think we need to keep the diversity of the trainings for that and, you know, be fair to ourselves. I really encourage you all, you know, no matter the career stage, to actually try to do something because, you know, it's for you, it's for your peers, for your friends and so on. But at the same time, I think we're trying to be realistic and we don't expect, you know, people who are already fighting to get their PhDs to be the one who are actually going to break the system.
It's always easy being the one third in line here because I cannot agree more with what my colleagues already mentioned. But from an institutional point of view, I can say a short answer, both. We do have, for instance, a supervisor training in place. We do notice also that we struggle getting the supervisors in sometimes. It's even in our name, it's a free university. This means we cannot oblige people to come, but we do reflect about it. And one of the things as mentioned by Christian is also that notion of safety and the notion of how can I create a safe space within my research group. And safety is often also characterized by an open dialogue. And I think this is where both bottom-up and top-down approaches could potentially meet each other in the fact that you can change the culture within each research group from within. That's an ultimate goal, of course. But indeed, and as my colleagues already mentioned, it varies hugely between different countries, cultures, institutions. There are institutions where they say supervisor training is obliged. Yet people come to the training, open their computer and just answer mails because they are not interested. So I think we need to also focus and continue doing efforts on sensibilization within universities because everyone is winning at the end, and that should be the message.
Stefan, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'm having second thoughts about this idea of obliging training. So I think what we often don't recognize is that we have a responsibility over the people that we work with, over the people that we supervise. And like we have responsibility there where it comes to research integrity and things of that nature, I think this should be put very high on the agenda. And I also think that voluntary supervisor training doesn't really work because the people who need it most will not come. So I was in a training recently, and the trainer said, like, yeah, you guys actually don't really need the training because you've already recognized that there's a role for you to play in managing the mental health of your subordinates. And I think that there's, from that perspective, there's something to be said for mandatory training, and it might not work for the older generations of people, but at least for new hires who land jobs with supervisory responsibilities, I think training should be made mandatory.
Thanks, Stefan. Mayya, do you want to add something? Or if not, then we have time for one more question. If there is someone in the audience.
Giving the voice into the audience. It's the best picture for now. Please.
Thanks, Julia. Sorry? Yeah, we can take two. Of course, the training issue is always an interesting one, because, as you say, the people who need it don't show up. What about other incentives? Could we link something to the assessment system where it's integrated in recruitment, promotion, conditions that you can talk to the way in which you support your team? Is that something that would work better? Because I guess there, people will need to, if it's a requirement, people will really need to respond to it. But I'll let you respond maybe after.
Yeah, if I may, I'll get a head start on that. So that actually relates to the comments I think I was making at the end of your session. I think we know, even though we don't have all the evidence in the world that we wish we could have, but we have evidence from previous surveys, from thesis, for instance, that there are some best practices in terms of supervision of what you can do in order to not damage the well-being of your PhD student, as much. But unfortunately, these things are not necessarily put in place. And I think you could have guidelines on that. You could have actually some form of grids of assessment as to, where you're actually starting in terms of implementing these. You could also put some things in terms of qualitative assessment, as to how people are. But these things for the moment are not yet developed. And here I fear something. I fear that with all the discussions we're having as to, how we're trying to change the culture of all of this for the better, we're actually imagining a lot of additional criteria and quality checks. And if you do that, people are just, not going to do anything because it's going to be too much. So I think this is also part of why we wanted to have the session here, is to try to think, as to, what could be the interesting, I'll call them criteria for the moment, but let's say items that we should put onto that agenda that could be enough to get a conversation started and get some change on without feeling to be too controlling or overwhelming of the supervisors. And if you have something that you want to exchange with us about that, you or anybody in the room, I think we'll be more than happy to look as to what we could do institutionally on this.
Thank you for that. Actually, it's on the same lines as Stefan and Karen just mentioned. And I think what we're discussing here is expecting an idealistic society where people who want to make a change come forward, are the change makers. But as mentioned earlier, people who are actually doing the damage are not coming forward. Even if you train them, they're there. So when you say you don't want to be overbearing or controlling of the PIs or supervisors, as young postdocs, we do have a probation period. We're doing our best, but still we're tested. We're still in the precarious zone, So why not implementing rules, restrictions, regulations? How is that going to hamper? That, I think, is going to create a safer space for researchers, because it's going to give accountability to PIs and supervisors. And in society, we have rules. Criminals are treated accordingly, and sometimes we need both. We can push forward empathy and compassion, but we can make stringent rules. One doesn't have to be, we don't have to choose between the two. They can go hand in hand. That's it.
So one thing that may be worth mentioning is that we are working on a proposal in which we want to pitch the idea of mental health certification for institutions. And this is something that we will base in part on the findings from the REMO survey, but clearly there would be a lot more work required to realize something like that. But in my mind, when we can get the accreditation bodies to actually ask for evidence that the university is engaged with this topic and is taking steps to prevent mental health issues emerging in their staff, then I think things will start moving. I've never seen those in power in universities dance so hard as when the accreditation was coming up. So I think if we can implement those types of questions in institutional accreditations, that might also have an impact.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And with this, slowly we start closing. We don't want to keep you away from your fish and meat chocolate. So some final words before we close. So, as we said a number of times, this is an open community. If you feel motivated, if you think like, oh, I would like to do something here, find us, send us an email, get in touch. We would be happy to get you on board. There is plenty to do here. And, you know, be active, bring your own ideas. We already have some ideas. Stefan mentioned that there is a Horizon Europe proposal is in the making. Actually, there are a number of other proposals are in the making. I know at least 5 or 6 of them within the network. So we expect more projects showing up, coming to our way. This needs people, and this is actually also a resource what we can use to pay ourselves and to do the change. And last but not least, use the network. And it's not only the REMO network, but use the MCAA network. There are brilliant minds around you, and if you step forward with your idea, you can really create similar projects, similar initiatives, what we just did here. But last but not least, don't forget to take time for talk, to discuss, to reflect on your situation, on, you know, anything about you find important in life. And with this quote, I would like to close. Thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy your lunch.